my furnace. And time. It is such a joy to be asked to talk with you again. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. What a gorgeous day for this. I'm going to leave this on my wrist. Okay, so I've written down what I want to say, but I want to look at you a lot while I say it. First of all, this takes me out of here every day up into the heavens. And I wrote, every time I look at the beautiful hanging on the wall behind me, I think it depicts a planet, probably the Earth. We are living on a planet. Wow. I mean, do you think about that every day? We are living on a planet. And when I gaze out these wonderful windows all around us with the trees and the sky, I feel that we are one with both. We are already sitting in the sky. I've tried that in a second grade class. I say, we're sitting in the sky, and they say, what? So where does the sky begin? Do you know the answer? Okay. I first became aware of the miracle of the planets and the stars in 2nd or 3rd grade, after my father had told me that Earth was in a solar system, and tried to explain what that meant. I got in trouble the next day in class because I couldn't contain this revelation. We had those desks whose tops were hinged and lifted to allow us to access our books and materials. Well, I was sitting next to Donald, my current crush, and I wanted to gift him with a stupendous piece of new information. Innocent as I was, I figured that if I raised my desk and Donald raised his, that the teacher would not see us, and I could tell him about the planets. Wrong. I don't know what her response was when she asked, what are you talking about? And I said, planets, in 2nd grade. In 4th grade, we moved to Clark Township, New Jersey, which is up in Union County. Any of you know where that is? It was still very rural then. There were cows at the school bus stop, marshy fields and apple orchards beyond the creek behind my yard, woods to the right of my house. That went on for several miles. And in those days, I think the world was either different or my mother was more trusting than I was when my children were little and than my daughter is with my grandchildren, because I spent long summer days roaming the orchard, lying on my tummy by the creek, watching tadpoles and turtles scooping out clay, exploring the woods. I remember naming an island in the creek. And here is one poem that I wrote looking back to that time, and it's called Tapestry. Dear prints in the creek mud, rotting apples underfoot in the orchard out back, and the field of marsh grass between the orchard and my yard, its meanders humming with the hot buzz of summer. These were home. I ran barefoot between the orchard rows where once the farmers' cows were free to roam and munch, then crouched among the matted weeds, inhaling scents of rank and rancid fruit among the drunken wasps. Other days I lay down in the valleys, my body hollowed in the yellow field, my breast budding against the bent grass, and my warm legs teased by grasshoppers whirring around me. It was all one then, even the tadpoles wiggling in the creek like quicksilver, the small brown turtles and the silky gray clay from the creek's banks that I squeezed through my fingers as my child hands shaped it into everything. Bring back any memories to you? Maybe because of that childhood immersion in nature, or maybe because of the impact of learning we live on a planet, or maybe because I am 1/16th Carolina Cherokee, though that sure isn't much, and I learned that when I went out to Santa Fe to live. I have always been attuned to the natural world, to our planet Earth, both around us, and as an integral part of the larger miracle of the cosmos. I have written many poems that either witness the damage we humans have done and continue to do to our planet, and to those species, animal, vegetable, and mineral, who share it with us, or poems that praise the gifts that surround us, our experiences of earth, air, fire, and water, and our bond with them. Poems for and from the earth, for its plants, stones, mountains, lakes, seas, skies, and for what the Native Americans call all our relations, members of the species with whom we share it. I also felt compelled to write poems that celebrate Earth's place in the cosmos, its relation to the whole, as far as we begin to understand the whole. In the preface to my book, Lizard Light, which is this one, notice that Santa Fe-like cover, you know. A lot of these were written out west. In the preface to my book, Lizard Light, Poems from the Earth, much of which was written in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the beauties of the Sangre de Cristo range of the Rockies, I say the following. I have written these poems in response to Earth's geological and evolutionary history, its place in the cosmos, and our place as part of the whole. The sky, the horizon, and the mountains of Santa Fe have given my spirit a place to grow. I am consistently aware that we are on a planet and that it is alive. It is time to write poems that go beyond the personal, poems that speak for the earth and all its inhabitants in a time of great vulnerability for all species and for the planet itself. We need poems that speak of universal concerns and point out that all beings exist as integral and interconnected parts of the larger community of the universe. Poems that affirm and confirm our mutual responsibility to the earth. And I wrote that in 1998, and here we are, and we need it more than ever, and that kind of awareness. Although many of the poems I want to share with you will celebrate the miracle of our being on this planet, I'd like to start with a few poems that grieve the ways in which either our mindless or deliberate behavior has damaged the earth, its other inhabitants, and even ourselves. And I know that with you all, I'm preaching to the choir, literally. But it's so important that we think about that. So in January 2011, I was enjoying the beauties of the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains at Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, where I was fortunate enough to have a 2-week residency. I found myself contemplating what the consequences might be if we continue on our course leading to extinctions of various species, including possibly ourselves, by contributing to global warming as we release toxins into the environment. Here are 2 poems I wrote that capture that concern. In the first, Mid-January Dream of the World Without Us, I allowed myself hope that even if we were no longer here, some species might survive after the planet heals. Mid-January Dream of the World Without Us. On the greening grass, 2 scarlet leaves, fused by a smudge of leaf mold at center, glisten with a trace of last night's rain. In the cerulean sky, more clear than we remember, the sun bathes the earth, announcing, nearby star, provider of all life. We were negligent, foolish not to contemplate the heavens more often, or cherish fallen leaves in the ready chalice of our palms. Now a skein of blackbirds wheels and wheels far above the naked trees, a single bird mind flinging it against the plum horizon. And water cycles through the clouds and seas, feeding forest life in fallow fields, carving canyons and ancestral hills. These have all endured, though we are done. These and whatever else survived our blind meddling in their communal lives, survived our hubris in believing we alone were destined to inherit the earth and the fullness thereof, we who now have lost the primordial garden. And may it not come to that. Then, when I found myself admiring the Virginia forested mountains, I remembered the contrast to them that I had witnessed when flying over clear-cut summits in the Pacific Northwest. So at that time, I wrote a poem that was some years ago called Rainforest Slash and Burn. Of course, I was thinking about the worldwide destruction of the rainforests, which continues to proceed at an alarming rate. Not only are unknown species threatened, but also sources of probable medical remedies that we will never discover will be destroyed. So rainforest slash and burn. Fallen across one another, the bodies of these trees tangle in a mass grave. What is left behind lies broken on cracked dirt, thin trunks and branches bleaching in the unfamiliar sun. Here and there a few, too young and spindly to be of use, still stand, their sparse-leafed crowns no longer woven into canopy, no longer folding birds. Farther up the hill, Blackened trunks the rancher burned stand guard like tombstones, while the wind scatters ashes across soil so dead that even its insects have abandoned it. Pick your way through this boneyard. Feel the dead limbs snap beneath your weight. See how some of them are shaped like animals we will never meet. And of course, we are and will not continue to be the only species suffering dire consequences if we don't wake up to our responsibility to the Earth. Here's a poem about one of the challenges polar bears are facing. Some years ago, I picked up a white stone from the beach, and I meant to bring that stone, and I forgot it this morning, so just look at white stones up here. But this one was shaped like a polar bear skull. It was. And the more I looked at it, the more it looked like the shape of a polar bear's head. Then I saw a documentary on TV about the threats the bears face, so I wrote the following. White stone. The mother polar bear lies down in snow and waits for more to cover her before she will give birth. Even in spring, food on the tundra is scarce. Come autumn, she will lead her one surviving cub to the Arctic shore and wait a long time for the sea to freeze before she can teach him to hunt seal. I am stroking a smooth white stone found on some forgotten strand. Sloped like a bear skull, it eyes me from a rusty indentation in its side. Caressing it, my thumb finds a cub, stretched out dead on the shore, having swum with his mother too far, broken ice, no seals, no land, bad storm, until drowning, he washed up here to lie on his side, mouth permanently open. Now we'll start going up. And I'll close this section of poems that witness for the earth with a poem reflecting an amazing discovery I found in a photo caption in an issue of National Geographic. It's absolutely amazing when you hear this. You may know it already, but how amazing that the bacteria protect their host and at the same time correspond with light shining from our sun and moon. But since I repeatedly know that it's all one, part of me feels, of course. And this is called symbiosis. It's about a squid. The Hawaiian bobtail squid forages in the night surf while waves of moonlight, of starlight, fall like sediment into the sea. Its globular eyes pulse green, its spotted body glows orange, brown, and blue. Smaller than my thumb, it is a galaxy, an organ of light inhabited by millions of luminescent bacteria. In the abyss beneath these squid, other nocturnal predators prowl, yet they cannot see the bobtails, whose bacteria protect them, shining in the wavelength of the stars and of the moon. What have we learned to do for the earth that means as much? How do they know? How do those bacteria know to shine in the wavelength of the stars and the moon? Whew. So, now I'd like to share several poems that celebrate the beauties of this old planet. When I first read about the dreamtime of these Australian Aboriginal peoples, it helped me define why I was writing poems. Writing dreamtime helped me understand why I was writing at all, writing poems for and hopefully from the earth. And I had the joy of memorizing this. I hope it's still up. I can do that. When it was danced to in New York City by the Merce Cunningham Dance Company. It was pretty, and then Glenn Velez was playing drums and I was sitting on the stage. It was very exciting. Dreamtime, and it has a prefatory note. In Australia, the totemic ancestors walked across the land, leaving words and musical notes in their footprints. The Aboriginals read the country as a musical score. Dreamtime. In the dreamtime, the ancestors went underground. Honey ant here, wallaby there, after their magic feet had planted song in the dust. And by these songs, the people learned each totem path, singing the holy hillock, sacred spring, and burning bush of their clan, mapping kinship where the tongue shifted but the song continued, humming up from the underworld like the first rivers. When I listen to the whales calling deep sea currents alive, the repeating melodies answered across great distances. When I hear the wolves, the birds, all the tribes descended from the ancestors, learning the planet by ear, defining it by song as the wind does each tree, I do what I can, throwing this song out from my house, like a rope in search of water through the fire. You know, I don't know where that ending came from. It just popped out of my fingers, like a rope in search of water through the fire. Sometimes these gifts come, and then you can't explain them. Just, I do what I can, throwing this song out from my house, like a rope in search of water through the fire. Here are some poems that reflect my joy in the land, sea, and sky we share, and how much we are a part of them, of the earth and of the cosmos. In the following poem, I hoped to express our being part of the earth. And you know our song, Barbara, I Am a River, flowing toward the ocean. Well, I wrote this years ago, but it corresponds with the song. Asleep you are a river. Asleep you are a river, face rippling over stones, legs drifting like branches, torso heaving currents. When you stretch your arms upward, you call tributaries home, breed clouds from your fingertips. Even your breathing is a long journey to the sea. Speaking of the sea, one summer not long ago, on a beach walk at dawn, my late husband Bill and I saw dolphins leaping not far offshore at Ship Bottom, on Long Beach Island, and you all know where that is, right? And since we are all, and I think of what we said earlier in the responsive reading, since we are all reconstituted atoms from the first stars, I felt a connection while writing this poem. Before writing it, though, I had to research how dolphins sleep. Atlantic dolphins. Dolphins leap in the dawn, their silver backs shedding sparks of foam, their rhythm a heartbeat beyond the breakers. Welcoming the sun, they raise salt into the wind as they follow schools of fish into the morning. Tonight, when they rest in the swells, bless you, swimming with half-closed eyes, blowholes open to the air, they will listen for one another and for the turning earth, whose moon sounds the tides that rock them. And perhaps they will dream of the stars, pale, phosphorescent ancestors, whistling faintly to them from the distant currents of the sky. How many of you have seen dolphins sleeping? Yeah, beautiful. And then I wrote this one, again, feeling our integration with the whole. Because we are part of it, and upon death, one way or another, flesh or ashes, we enter the earth, we merge with it, our atoms recycling into all that is. In my most recent book, which I read from last time I talked with you, the title is Recycling Starlight, which we are. Returning. We migrate toward the spine of the earth, our vertebrae singing the pitch of an axis blessed by swirling magma. Our bones seek the center, while our tendons bend again in stems and branches, and our skin stretches dirt. On the horizon, mountains wait for our hearts to join the others, beating slowly inside stone. And when deer come down to the shimmer of salt, they will taste our senses returning to the sea. We need to remember that we, the very earth and the species who share it with us, are all luminous, if we only open the eyes of our hearts and spirits and celebrate what shines within and around us. And I have a quote from, some of you may know Annie Diller's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. Do any of you know that book? She spent time she lived in the Appalachian Mountains, and she documented a year. It's a gorgeous book. And she gives us a tale about people who were formerly blind and they did surgery and then they could see, and how they perceived the world, seeing as adults for the first time or as children. And this is a beautiful passage. When her doctor took her bandages off and led her into the garden, the girl who was no longer blind saw the tree with lights in it. It was for this tree, says Annie, it was for this tree I searched through the peach orchards of summer, in the forests of fall, and down winter and spring for years. Then one day I was walking along Tinker Creek, thinking of nothing at all. That's always a key, and you've got to be thinking of nothing at all. Thinking of nothing at all, and I saw the tree with the lights in it. I saw the backyard cedar where the mourning doves roost, charged and transfigured, each cell buzzing with flame. I stood on the grass with the lights in it, grass that was wholly fire, utterly focused and utterly dreamed. It was less like seeing than like being, for the first time, seen, knocked breathless by a powerful glance. The flood of fire abated, but I'm still spending the power. Gradually the lights went out in the cedar, the colors died, the cells unflamed and disappeared. I was still ringing. I had been my whole life a bell, and never knew it until at that moment I was lifted and struck. I have since only very rarely seen the tree with the lights in it. The vision comes and goes, mostly goes, but I live for it, for the moment when the mountains open and a new light roars in spate through the crack, and the mountains swam. So if you've ever seen the tree with lights in it, you know what it feels like, and if you haven't, go walking and think of nothing at all. And I think some of us have had moments like that. So I'm going to read 4 short poems where I half dreamed, half remembered that light. I grew up in a house with 3 willow trees in the front yard, which routinely fell down in hurricanes and my father hauled back up with chains. And there were also stray willows in the woods next to my house that stretched for several miles. It always struck me that among the first greens of spring are the almost neon new greens of the willow. I still marvel at their brilliance. In writing Willow, I was remembering that childhood joy at seeing the coming of spring in the woodland willow, its bright green shining from among the just budding trees. It's very short. Willow. The green window of the willow, deep in the woods, shining from among the still bare trees, opens into the first sunlight. So pure its branches singe the air, so bright that I remember living there. Yeah, and that's not when I played in the willow trees in the yard. That was a different living there. When Bill and I lived in Santa Fe, there was a lilac bush outside our bedroom window. And given less ground light than where we'd lived in New Jersey before our move, I felt very moved to write the following. The night sky. When something taps your window in the dark, a large moth beating its pale wings, or a pungent branch of lilac scraping in the wind, you wake to the night sky pouring in upon you. You have been waiting all your life for this, open as a harp. And when a bird cries out from the depths of the lilac where it has slept every night undisturbed, you understand that it too has opened to a shining that sings. I think it's scraping the window all winter. The earth talks to us, you know. We should just listen. Sometimes my wish to comfort when hearing of a sad event prompts a poem. Before we left Santa Fe to return to New Jersey in 2002, but after I'd been hired to teach in a private parochial school upon our return, I learned of the sudden and unexpected death of a popular elementary student in the school that I would be teaching in. So I wrote the following as a tribute, hoping to offer some empathy to the community. And, you know, again, like a rope in search of water through the fire, I don't know where this title came from, but the gravity of the sacred. Visible and invisible, it tethers us, wraps our limbs in radiant linen. It beats in our chests, flares out to bless whatever gets in the way. I have seen it leap across a field, riding the wind from blade to blade until the grass grows dim again and lost. Feel it knocking at your throat, wanting to speak in tongues about the light that even now is flaming in your flesh for a little while. I don't know if it had comforted them, but it comforted me to write it. Because we are all flaming inside with good light. And when I was in residence at Virginia Center for the Creative Arts last January, I was so moved by the power of the surrounding Blue Ridge Mountains that I wrote the following, which also, I think, reflects my feelings of having been through the valley of losing Bill. But for those of you that heard my last presentation, you can feel a distance since then. And this is, I don't know, I think it's fantasy, you decide. Some nights I visit the mountains, called by the voice of the wind fluting through old-growth forests. And I find myself lying on the lip of a cliff, the night sky wetting me to stone, stars falling through me. Some nights I lie there till dawn, becoming something other, some elemental animal of fire whose memories flare and go out, leaving me like ashes that will wash down the rock face to earth. Some say I only dream these mountains, that they are not real, and no beast born of fire can live. I tell them I have been there, that the cliff bears the mold of my face, and that my flesh still smolders with the light of dying stars, though it does not hurt to burn my way back home. Since Tapestry, the first poem I shared, reflected my rural childhood, I'd like to close my talk this morning with another poem that harkens back to a childhood fantasy, one also written while I was at VCCA. And you may have felt this. Sometimes you're coming down a hill and you see twinkling lights in the valley of a city or a town or a village, and it looks like, fairyland or something, particularly if you still believe in magic, which I do. So, revisiting that feeling, I wrote this, and I'll close with this poem in just a few words. In that far haven. In childhood, I often visited a village at twilight, a village twinkling in the gloaming sky, floating there like some far haven of the Fae, come down to bless us. I was welcome then, invited to a feast set out on silver plates, and sat at table with the rest, cloaked like them, in strange, diaphanous, and haloed flesh. Mild-faced wolves curled like faithful dogs at our feet, laid their silky heads upon our laps as we slipped them roasted scraps of a wild beast, brought in from the dark, uncharted forests far beyond us. Some sacrament was being acted out in those hallowed rooms, some festive celebration of the bond between us all. And I, the guest, craved to stay among their kind, to live forever in that sphere of light and laughter, drinking ambrosia with the ancient ones who'd come here long ago, ancestors of earth, air, fire, water, who deigned to come among us now and then, crossing the threshold of our mortal coil, who kindly let me join their festal rites, and taught me well. As it says in our closing song, we stand on holy ground, everywhere and all the time. May we honor that fact by accepting the responsibility to care for the earth, for one another, and for the whole web of life of which we are privileged to be an integral part.